Throughout our history, the Coast Guard has changed. Our cutters, our people, our name. But through it all, what has remained are the traits found in every Coast Guardsman and woman. Traits of honor, respect, devotion to duty. And though we're separated by time, we are united by a purpose to do whatever it takes to help those in need. And we carry on that legacy, a legacy of all those who came before us, and a legacy that will continue long after we're gone. Because we make history every single day.
Welcome to all of our viewers from across the country, and thank you to those of you who are participating, who we'll meet shortly. Rear Admiral Mary Landry, Jennifer Carpenter, and David Grzebinski. I'm Philip Knoll, and I host the Had to Go Out podcast, where I help Coast Guard veterans tell their most dangerous, daring, and epic sea stories. I'm so stoked to be part of today's latest installment of the Stories That Matter virtual event series, hosted by the National Coast Guard Museum Association. The stories that you're going to hear today are so critical to the Coast Guard and the industry, and are perfect examples of why we're building the National Coast Guard Museum. The National Coast Guard Museum Association is committed to building a world-class museum that will honor the heritage of the U.S. Coast Guard and provide the public a gateway to discover Coast Guard life. In its 80,000 square feet and 5 decks, it will showcase thousands of stories through interactive exhibits, programs, public and private partnerships, STEM-based educational programs, and leadership training opportunities. The incredible legacy of heroism, bravery, and professional competence demonstrated by this often unnoticed multi-mission service needs to be understood by American citizens. And the extraordinary work of the United States Coast Guard deserves to be preserved, memorialized, and honored, and currently it is the only armed service without a national museum. The Museum Association will deliver the museum through the When the Most Is Expected capital campaign, a public-private partnership. To date, the Museum Association has reached $75.8 million in private, state, and federal commitments toward its $150 million goal. And momentum continues to build from the announcement of a 2024 museum opening by Coast Guard Commandant Admiral Carl Schultz. That means that we're more than halfway to our goal. One of the wings in the museum will showcase the Coast Guard as a champion of commerce. The Coast Guard supports the flow of global commerce by supporting aids to navigation, ensuring marine safety, supporting commercial port security at home and abroad, and conducting ice breaking, international ice patrol, and polar operations. The Coast Guard facilitates exploration of new routes and protects natural resources. The museum will explore stories about the global supply chain and the flow of commerce and cargo across a vast network of waterways. Today, our guests will discuss how the Coast Guard and its industry partners work together to ensure the safety of these waterways while keeping millions of tons of vital maritime commerce moving, knowing that every spring as inland waterway levels rise to seasonal high water caused by rain and snowfall. If you have any questions, I encourage you to send them to us via our question and answer function at the bottom of your screen for a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. As we kick off today's discussion, I'd like to first introduce you to Rear Admiral Mary Landry, who served as the 8th District Commander as well as a number of other assignments during her more than 30-year career in the Coast Guard. Welcome, Admiral Landry.
Thank you so much, Chief. It's great to be here. And I want to welcome everybody. I'm excited to talk about not only my tour as the District Commander of the 8th District Guardians, 26 state region, major influence of confluence of Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio, and Tennessee rivers. But before I became the District Commander in the late 80s, I actually cut my teeth as a marine inspector and casualty investigator in Houston. And I climbed these barges, the double bottoms. We usually went out at 5 o'clock in the morning because it would be so hot by the end of the day. So we'd have to do our inspections early sometimes, but you understand and appreciate from that tour the work environment and the challenges and how hard it is, but how important it is to really support the 8th district. So there's a good pictorial of it. As I said, a 26 state region, and I had folks stationed throughout the region and visited them often, tried to get around as much as I could to really thank them for the arduous work. We worked very closely with the Army Corps of Engineers, for instance. They managed the locks and dams, and it was a team effort between the Corps and the Coast Guard. We're on the water, they're helping us with the locks and dams, and it was a day-to-day, management system. And I learned also the importance of the facilitation of commerce. That was my mantra throughout my career. If you build it, we will come, however you want to call it. Without commerce, what would our mission be like? And so facilitation of that commerce was so critical. And as you look at how this river traffic was so vital, the management of the waterways, whether it was high water or drought or everything in between, it was very tactical, very important, and very critical for everybody. So as a District 8 commander, the first dinner I hosted in my flag quarters, I always told this story, was with the president of AWO, and I've known Jen Carpenter for years, a wonderful person. Her predecessor was Tom Allegretti, and I hosted Tom, and I hosted the CEOs of Kirby, Ingram, and some of the other barge companies in the 8th district. And it was almost symbolic to me to let them know and understand how I respected and how much I felt their mission and their business was very important to our relationship and our facilitation of commerce mission. So the first dinner we had was, like I said, at the quarters, and we had great discussions about what we could do as a team to, we're a regulator, but we want the same thing these companies want. We want safety, we want security, we want environmental strength in this country. So we all wanted the same things, and we don't want to get anybody hurt or killed. These are dangerous. These are hardworking environments for our river tender guys and for these barge and tug and tow companies. So our goal was very focused. I visited the headquarters of some of the barge companies and understood how they train their folks for safety and how they train them for being out there in daytime, nighttime, all hours, all weather conditions. And so we really had a great discussion at that dinner, and we moved forward. And there were examples of the day-to-day things that would come up, and the Coast Guard 8th District folks assigned, they knew how to handle the day-to-day missions. But then there would be these serious, I would call them focusing events, one of which was an example is the 2011 floods. Right at the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi, we had very, very high water, and we had flooding. And it was historic flooding. And this was when the Army Corps of Engineers, for those who might remember, had to actually blow the Birds Point, New Madrid floodway, which was, they had to keep from flooding Cairo, Illinois. This was agreed 2 years ago that they would have this as an emergency procedure. But you can imagine how important it was to, how do you facilitate commerce in a situation like this and in a historic event? So it was all hands on deck for both the Coast Guard and the industry and the Corps of Engineers. And certainly it got the attention of, it had all sorts of national attention. And so we worked through those floods. I remember hosting the commandant. The commandant visited because it was so critical to see what was going on. It was one of those, as I said, historic focusing events. Another example that took place when I was a civilian in the Coast Guard. After I retired, I went back to help with a mission as a senior executive. And I remember it being in the Pentagon in the Department of Defense, and they were supposed to be talking about Sandy. It was an after action from Superstorm Sandy. And in walks the Secretary of Defense, and he says, little did I know, we will be making decisions about blowing rocks up in the Mississippi River to help facilitate commerce. So just to make the point that not only was this a day-to-day mission and a business for the industry and a day-to-day mission for the Coast Guard, but when these historic events happened, it took a whole of government and a whole of the private sector, the public-private partnerships. It took all of us coming together to figure out how we were going to facilitate commerce, because this is vital, vital cargo that's moving up and down these rivers, whether it's grain, whether it's coal. Another anecdote is when Australia had terrible flooding and couldn't export coal to Asia, one of the barge companies actually had very increased throughput of exporting coal to Asia to supplement what was not being supplied by Australia. So this isn't just a domestic thing, it has global reach, moving these cargoes up and down the river. And I just want to really, I'm enjoying my time catching up with Jennifer and Dave and talking story, if you will, about all the work we did. I was talking to Dave yesterday in our practice, and I remember visiting Wilkinson Point. And this is we have vessel traffic services around the country, but for Wilkinson Point, what we have to do on a pretty regular basis is when we have really high water, we have to set up I would call it an emergency VTS, an emergency vessel traffic system. It doesn't justify full manning year round, but when you have really high water at this point in the Baton Rouge, Louisiana area, we come together with Coast Guard extra staffing, and the industry comes together. And when I visited Wilkinson Point, because of high water and this vessel traffic system, it was a partnership. I think we had a Kirby barge and an Ingram watchstander, or we had an Ingram barge and a Kirby watchstander. I can't remember which, but between the Coast Guard and the industry, we put a team together right there at the point to radio and give guidance to the barges. And they put controls in place, but you can't stop traffic. The worst thing you can do is stop traffic altogether. So to increase the safety measures that were necessary for high water, we had a team effort going on up there, and I had the pleasure of visiting during my tour. So I just want to reemphasize how much I appreciated being the 8th District Commander, and how I'm so happy today to talk to you about this important mission. They're unsung heroes. Nobody gets to see this behind the scenes stuff that goes on, and how hard and arduous the work is. They have to cut through kudzu and all these vines and everything that get all over things. They have to reset buoys all the time. And I was always thankful that the most important thing for me was the safety of our Coast Guard members and the safety of the industry personnel. You don't want anybody hurt or killed during this mission, but you also want to facilitate commerce. So I think I really look forward to having a chance to answer any questions you might have about this mission and how important it is, and about the wonderful folks we have serving. And as you saw in the museum, we're really excited to tell the story so that people appreciate the unsung heroes of the 8th Coast Guard District and what they do for our nation. And I think I'll stop there and turn it back to Chief Null. Thank you.
Admiral Landry, thanks for sharing. I think the one of the best lines that you had there was, one day you show up to work and our mission today is to blow up rocks, but you do the Coast Guard long enough, and I think that just doesn't even come as a surprise anymore. You never know. So excellent presentation. Thank you, Admiral. Our next guest is Jennifer Carpenter, President and CEO of the American Waterways Operators, the Tugboat, Towboat, and Barge Industry Association. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Chief Null, and thank you to the Museum Association. It is great to be here. I love the title of this series, Stories That Matter, because my mission in life is to tell people that river commerce matters, and the men and women who operate tugboats, towboats, and barges that deliver that river commerce matter to our economy, to our security, to our environment, to our quality of life. So it's great to be able to talk a little bit about that on the webinar today, and even better to know that these kinds of stories are going to get highlighted when the Coast Guard Museum is finally built. So what are we talking about here? We are talking about nearly 700 million tons of critical cargo delivered by barge each year. 515 million of those tons are delivered on the rivers. That is about $135 billion worth of product. We're talking about everything from petroleum products that are fueling our cars, that are keeping the lights on, agricultural products. 60% of US export grain moves by barge through the inland waterways system. The fertilizer, the inputs that enable those crops to grow in the first place. Steel, construction materials. All of the things that keep our economy moving, as well as those big things that you just can't put on the road, or we'd have even bigger infrastructure challenges than we have now. Industrial equipment, rockets, space shuttles even. So it really is important. We saw during our experience of COVID-19 over the last year plus, how important it is that we have continual control over our supply chain and that we're keeping commerce moving safely, securely, efficiently. It is a dynamic operating environment. So we're talking today about seasonal high water. We experience seasonal low water. We experience ice. We experience hurricanes. These are the routine events that we deal with in this dynamic operating space. Sometimes we deal with unexpected events. The ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline last week, barges moved into position to pick up some of that slack and deliver fuel to places that it couldn't go. Right now, we're seeing a challenge with a pretty serious crack in the I-40 bridge over the Mississippi River at Memphis, where the river has temporarily been shut down, vehicular traffic has been stopped. All of this makes it just imperative that our industry work closely with the Coast Guard and also with the Corps of Engineers to respond to events as they occur, to plan for those that we can anticipate, and to quickly do what needs to be done to keep this vital commerce moving safely. We are really, really privileged as an industry to have had a long-standing, productive, constructive partnership with the Coast Guard that is really rooted in trust, rooted in a shared appreciation for the work that each other does. We are all out there on the water together, so we're kind of a brotherhood and sisterhood, and that is extremely helpful as we deal with the many challenges that we confront in the course of a typical year and sometimes an atypical year. You know, good cooperation and partnership when stuff is happening, it doesn't just happen. You have to have some structure. You have to have processes in place that really enable you to kick into gear when you need to. And we have a number of those in place between our industry, the Coast Guard, and the Corps of Engineers, who are really critical partners in this as well. At the operational level, there are 16 groups on the rivers from the Gulf Intercoastal Waterway all the way up to the Illinois River, the Ohio River, throughout the system, which meet regularly, Coast Guard, Corps, industry personnel, to discuss day-to-day issues. Where do we have a buoy off station that needs to be put back? Where do we have shoaling, dredging that needs to be done? Is there a need for some changes to tow sizes to safely navigate a particular area? These groups are kind of unsung heroes, keeping commerce moving on a daily basis. Communication, trust are the heart of it. Sometimes we need to elevate things really to the senior executive level, not only at the companies, but also the Coast Guard and the Corps. And we saw this going back all the way to 1988 when we had a historic drought on the Mississippi River. There was a recognition among the leaders of the barge and towing industry, the Coast Guard and the Corps, that we were facing a crisis. This was not an everyday seasonal low water situation. This was a real-time crisis that had the potential to have significant effect on the American supply chain. And we realized, the Coast Guard realized, the Corps realized, we needed to come together and really have a structure, a mechanism in place that would enable us to respond to these situations, to alleviate crisis, and to prepare to prevent future crises. And so a group called the River Industry Executive Task Force, which is a standing task force of AWO, was put together, and it includes senior leaders from throughout the inland barge and towing industry. It includes the commanders of the 8th and 9th Coast Guard District. It includes the commanding generals of the Corps' Great Lakes and Ohio River Division and the Mississippi Valley Division, as well as the Navigation Operations Chief from headquarters. They meet regularly to keep the lines of communication open when a situation arises that requires a more global look, more coordination, elevation, really a systemic response that goes beyond what those very effective operating groups that I mentioned are able to do. REDIF, as it's called, is able to step in and really provide the senior leadership focus to enable us to unknot the situation. One other partnership vehicle that I want to mention, something Admiral Landry knows very well from her tenure in the Coast Guard, is the Coast Guard AWO Safety Partnership. This partnership goes back more than 25 years. It is the oldest partnership between the Coast Guard and any segment of the maritime industry. And it was put together to really enable the Coast Guard and our industry, which is the largest segment of the U.S. domestic fleet, to come together and, without Congress passing a law and telling us we had to, come together, look at safety, security, environmental performance in our industry, and ask ourselves, what do we need to do to make things better, safer, to keep commerce moving and deliver for the American people? So the partnership has a national arm where industry leaders come together with the Assistant Commandant for Prevention Policy and his or her team on a regular basis to look at trends and see where additional focus is needed. The partnership also has regional arms and a group called the Mid-America Quality Steering Committee that focuses specifically on the rivers. This partnership has really enabled us to take a holistic look at keeping commerce moving safely. So at the regional level, with a focus on waterways management, the Mid-America RQSC put together a waterways action plan that includes communication processes and protocols, actions to be taken during high water, low water, ice, etc. It is very much a tool in the industry's toolkit, so that as the situation changes dynamically, the operating groups can come together, they can pull out the waterways action plan, say this is what's going on, these are the actions that we should consider taking. It's not binding, we've got the ability to respond flexibly and dynamically, but it's an extremely effective tool, and it was developed under the umbrella of this partnership. Not long ago, again, under the umbrella of this partnership, industry came together, including towboat captains from throughout the river system, to help the Coast Guard assess aids to navigation needs throughout the system. Where do we have particularly critical needs? Do we have any aids that really aren't needed where they are, and those resources could be deployed more effectively elsewhere? So partnership has been extremely important, both to managing the vicissitudes, the ups and downs of operation in a dynamic operating environment, but also stepping back and taking a little bit broader look at the tools that we can give ourselves to do our job more effectively and more safely. I also want to add that that partnership has produced excellent work outside of the waterways management space, but which has an absolutely critical impact on what we're talking about here, keeping commerce flowing, because every accident avoided, every pollution incident avoided is not only important from the standpoint of safety of life and environmental sustainability, it's also important to keeping the rivers open, right? Just as we don't want to shut down a channel because we've got buoys off station or because we've got high water or low water, we don't want to shut down a channel because somebody did something dumb and sunk a barge blocking the channel. So the work that the safety partnership does is so important to keeping this economically critical maritime commerce moving for our country. Just to close, why have these partnerships been so successful? Again, I think it's because they're based on trust. It's because we take the long view. We haven't waited for challenging situations or crises to occur to say, how are we going to work together when something's going on? We've tried to get together while the sun is shining and plan for rain. And that's just been critical. Coordination, communication, planning, relationship building. Admiral Landry talked about having industry leaders over to her quarters as one of the first things that she did when she took command in the 8th District. That kind of stuff is not just fun because this industry is made up of such fantastic people, as is the Coast Guard. It's critical to make sure that when something's going on, we can get on the phone, we can call each other and we can say, we got to move quickly. And we know who we are, we know who we're dealing with, and we can respond to meet the moment. Last thing I will say, in the spirit of giving ourselves the tools to make these partnerships effective, infrastructure. We've got a crying need for infrastructure investment in this country. We see that with respect to the locks and dams. We see that with respect to the bridges. I mentioned Memphis. So we've got to make sure we're working together very well, the Coast Guard, the industry, the Corps of Engineers. We've got to make sure that the structures within which we are working are up to the task. And in that same spirit, the critical Coast Guard Waterways Commerce Cutter fleet, those inland buoy tenders that are so important after we have had high water and then the river has fallen and we've got buoys off station and we got to get things moving because all of that cargo needs to get to market. The Coast Guard's buoy tender fleet is old, it's losing reliability. There is a terrific plan underway. A request for proposals was just let to begin the needed process of recapitalizing that fleet. We are eager to see that happen because that's going to be, again, so important to our continued cooperative work to keep commerce flowing safely and efficiently. So these are the kinds of great stories that we look forward to seeing highlighted in the museum, and we're just proud to be part of that effort. Thank you so much, and back over to you, Chief.
Jennifer, thanks for sharing. It's a good thing that you guys didn't wait for that rainy day, because it sounds like 2021's turned into a banner year. Ice, high water, broken bridge, broken pipeline. It's those partnerships are definitely going to come into play. Thanks again for sharing. Next, we'll hear from Commander Christian Berger, who is responsible for Coast Guard operations along 2,200 miles of commercially navigable inland waterways as the Deputy Sector Commander of Sector Upper Mississippi. Commander Berger won't be able to join us for our question and answer session later, but we'll have Lieutenant Commander Stephanie Moore and Chief Warrant Officer Eric Quistad available to answer your questions.
Hello, my name is Commander Chris Barger, and I'm the Deputy Sector Commander of Coast Guard Sector Upper Mississippi River, located in St. Louis, Missouri. It is a distinct honor to speak with this group today and share my experiences facilitating the Inland River Marine Transportation System, and in particular doing so during the floods of 2019. The Inland Transportation System is made up of 10,300 miles of river, 58 locks and dams, 2,000 bridges, and supports over $400 billion in annual economic impact. Here at Sector Upper Mississippi River, we have a small part of that system, but we encompass all or part of 11 states. We have over 2,200 miles of commercially navigable waterways. The three major rivers in our area of responsibility are the Mississippi, Illinois, and Missouri rivers. Sector Upper Mississippi River covers this expansive area of operations with its 5 river buoy tenders, 3 marine safety detachments, and a sector staff here in St. Louis of 80 active duty and 52 reservists. We also work closely with several industry groups, the main ones being the River Industry Action Committee for the Mississippi River, the Illinois River Carriers Association, and the Missouri River Action Committee. The Army Corps and the Coast Guard share the workload of keeping the rivers navigable for both professional and recreational mariners to ensure the channel is maintained and marked by both physical and virtual aids to navigation, through dredging, and when necessary, enacting waterway closures and restrictions. It is important that we maintain partnerships prior to any kind of natural disaster, high water, low water, or ice event. This is done using the Waterways Action Plan. The purpose of the Waterways Action Plan is to have an agreed upon document between the towing vessel industry, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Coast Guard. Now that we have set the scene, we'll take a look at our high water event case study from 2019. This event was widespread, impacting all 3 rivers in the Upper Mississippi River area responsibility, as well as the entire Western River system. It set records in some localities for crest height. In all cases, it set records as the longest period of high water conditions on record. The high water conditions were being seen across the region starting in late February and extending through August. These record-setting conditions were predicated by what we call the perfect storm, made up of above average snowpack across the upper plains, already saturated ground from persistent rains through the fall of 2018 and into the winter, a deep frost from colder than average winter temperatures to the north, and above average spring rainfall. The high water conditions resulted in many levees being breached on all 3 of our major rivers. In addition to the closures directed in the Waterways Action Plan for the St. Louis Harbor, requests quickly started coming in from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers districts to close river spans to all vessel traffic due to concerns that the displacement from vessels would cause further levee overtopping and breaches. The Coast Guard also stood by to man flood punt teams to deploy to impacted communities. The Western River flood punt teams were stood up at the local Western River sectors following the 1993 historic floods to provide rescue and disaster relief capabilities in shallow overland flooding. Due to river closures, barges were delayed arriving into the system above St. Louis for loading, and then loaded barges were delayed coming back down the river headed for New Orleans. Once closures were lifted, the Coast Guard relied on the expertise of the Industry Action Group representatives to manage vessel queues. Criticality of cargoes was best handled by these subject matter experts. As the river levels dropped, sediment was deposited, causing severe shoaling that threatened to hinder vessel traffic once again. Thanks to the Coast Guard, Army Corps, and industry partnerships, virtual buoys, placed based on Army Corps surveys, were broadcast through the AIS system, providing insight for mariners as to the narrowed safe passages through these areas. This approach was far more responsive than physical Army Corps dredges and physical Coast Guard river tenders being able to get to the site. Without this emerging technology, river traffic would have again been halted in these areas. The National Weather Service is currently predicting only mild to moderate risk for high water this season. However, we will still continue to prepare and respond to any event and utilize our relationships with our industry partners, federal and local government agencies, and through the use of our Waterways Action Plan and other tools we have available to us.
Thank you, Commander Berger, and the men and women of Coast Guard Sector Upper Mississippi, and all of those who serve on the inland rivers. Our final guest is Mr. David Grzebinski, President and CEO of Kirby Corporation, which operates the nation's largest fleet of inland tank barges and towing vessels. Welcome, David.
Oh, thank you, Chief. As you've heard from all the speakers today, we work very well together with the Coast Guard, with the Corps, with industry, and frankly, as an operator with our customers. We all have the same goal, which is to be safe and not have any product in the water, have anybody hurt, or run into any infrastructure for example. Look, water levels fluctuate. They always do. And, every year we have high water. It is at a level of danger to what we do. But we've dealt with this for years, and we're prepared. We build into our operation and response plans ways to deal with it. And I'll just share a few things that we do at Kirby as an operator to make sure that our mariners are prepared and we're prepared to deal with things like high water where it can be very dangerous. What we do is we have a high water plan, if you will. It's a comprehensive set of policies and procedures for vessel operations during high water. And it's been put together through decades of experience with our mariners and our best captains. And it's frankly meant to be a best practice for navigating through high water and the rough navigation conditions that can exist because of that. Our wheelhouse personnel all go through high water scenario training. We do simulator training through it, and it's a big part of what they have to do before they can go out in high water. We also have, as you would expect, action plans to reduce the risk. And I'll give you an example. We'll adjust our horsepower to tonnage ratio. So what does that mean? We'll put fewer barges in a line haul tow. We'll keep extra boats on to help with the tow. We'll reduce the number of barges in our fleets. We'll increase the number of lines and other riggings on our vessels. We'll increase just plain horsepower. Have assist boats at bridges. We'll have extra horsepower in the fleets to help move the barges around. And of course, we'll update real-time navigation data to our mariners on board. You know, it's not a paper system. It actually goes right into their charts and displays. And then, of course, our shoreside people will help. Our port captains will stay in regular touch with all the vessels, and that's a normal course of event in any water system, but it's heightened during high water, where our port captains are in constant contact with the vessels. And many times we'll take very experienced port captains and put them on the vessel to ride through a particularly tough bridge transit or a tough area, as Admiral Landry talked about Wilkinson Point. Many times we'll have an extra port captain there to hop aboard to get through a tough situation. That said, really it is a partnership, as you heard from everybody on this call so far. It's a partnership that works extremely well. We all have the same goal, which is to be safe. And that partnership is critical to the industry and to keep commerce going. But let me just put in a shameless plug here for the Coast Guard Museum. That's what we're here for, is to garner support for the museum, where the museum can highlight all the great work the Coast Guard does to keep industry moving. We feel it, we love it. They're a true industry partner. And we know that that's going to be highlighted in the Coast Guard Museum, and we're huge supporters of the museum, and we just want to ask everybody to support it, because it's a real needed thing for the honor of the Coast Guard. So that concludes my comments. Chief, I'll turn it back to you.
And thanks, David. You talk about the tough navigation conditions in those inland waterways. There's the best kept secret they always joke about in the Coast Guard's the D8 Mafia. They call them the Mafia because they're able to stay their entire careers in those inland waterways, specifically because they learn how to navigate it, and that's a skill that does not come easy. So thanks for your presentation. And thank you to the guests to our participants for all the great questions that came in. As a reminder, we've got Rear Admiral Landry, Jennifer Carpenter, Lieutenant Commander Moore, Mr. Quistad, and David, all on the screen now. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them now. I'm going to go ahead and start with one to Admiral Landry. Admiral, as the senior government official for the inland rivers, especially during seasonal impacts on commerce, what kept you up at night?
You saw, and you got some great highlights, Chief. Thanks for the question, but you saw a lot of video and you heard from Jennifer and Dave about this is a dangerous, tactical, busy business. And we're so proud of the safety record. Everybody's very proud of the safety record, but I always worried about somebody getting hurt or killed. Seriously. I mean, that's your worst fear as a district commander, because you have 4,000 people, you have active duty, you have reserves, you have civilians. You have auxiliary. We didn't mention the auxiliary through this, but I had an auxiliary volunteer to be on a river tender as a cook when their cook had to go on emergency leave. So I was always thinking about the people, and I was always thinking about making sure everybody stayed safe. And we should pride ourselves, because everybody focuses on safety, and everybody focuses on, drills, exercises, planning, or adding people with expertise if you have a condition that is unusual. Dave gave an example of it, but we did the same thing. We plugged and played. If I had people at one sector that I knew had expertise, and I knew another sector was involved in something that was challenging, you send people over TAD. So I think we were always involved, and what kept me up most at night was making sure there's some great faces, making sure everybody was safe, because you had to keep working, you had to keep things moving. It was so vital. And so I think we all had the same kind of concern. But luckily, I mean, I had a great run for a few years, and I was very proud of everybody's focus on the mission and on staying safe.
Love it, Admiral. The true sign of a great leader, and I think Coast Guard leadership, is that people are the #1 priority, and you just reiterated that. So thank you. We've got one from one of the participants today, Miss Pamela Glass, who's asking for Jennifer. She's talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and how the nation seems to be beginning to kind of recover and resume that new normal. How's the industry doing? Are they moving into recovery at this point?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Chief. And Pam, I don't see you, but I'm glad to know you're here. Yes is the answer. And I'll just I'll kind of back up for a minute and say and I think it fits really well with what we've been talking about today, a resilient industry that works hard to keep commerce moving while keeping people safe, and that partners with government to do that. That was very much our experience throughout COVID. Our industry very quickly pivoted to the circumstances of a pandemic, just as we would pivot to the circumstances of high water, low water, ice, whatever. Tweaked up policies and procedures to try to keep people safe, and was able to keep commerce moving really without missing a beat. We did a very good job as an industry keeping mariners safe by prioritizing mariner safety, recognizing that, you know, there wasn't like a false trade-off. Do we keep operating or do we keep people safe? It was, no, we keep people safe because that's how we keep operating. So the safety situation and the operational situation were positives over the last year, but no question, demand for cargoes moved by the industry took a real hit. So we took some economic punches in the gut, and we are beginning to see improvement there. We hope we expect that will continue as economic activity resumes nationwide. So Pam, yeah, I'm looking forward to better. I'd really like to see some action on an infrastructure package to deal with some of these unmet needs that'll have a direct impact both on our sector of the economy, but also our customers who, who we're in the business here to serve. We don't move cargo for ourselves. We move cargo for businesses and consumers.
Excellent, Jennifer. I think we could all echo. We all wanted to resume that new normal and get better. So thanks for that reply, and thanks for the question, Pam. Dave, if we could go back to you, a question here. During seasonal events, how does Kirby specifically manage its fleet to keep commerce going? What's your biggest challenge? What's the biggest challenge for your fleet?
Well, it's really horsepower. We end up, reducing the number of barges we move with a towboat, and so you have to manage the horsepower. You need experienced mariners. The mariners are the ones that make the difference, right? They're the ones that know how to go up and down the river. They know how to transit the bridges, Vicksburg or whatever bridge, and they're the ones that are critical. So when you add horsepower, you got to add the right mariners in the right spot. So, that's the biggest part, is making sure we've got the right people in the right spot. And they do a terrific job. It's really about the mariner and the people. As Admiral Landry said, it's about the safety of these people. They are the key to our whole system. They're the key to Kirby. It's the mariner.
Love it, David. Excellent answer. Horsepower in the mariner. That was perfect. I definitely you can tell that you got a lot of experience on the water down there. Let's go to Chief Warrant Officer Quistad and Commander Moore. Thanks for joining us in Commander's place. What's the biggest takeaway from your work on the inland rivers that you can bring to a future assignment? Those D8 tours are pretty unique. Not a lot of people get the opportunity. What do you think that you guys will take from that to carry forward?
Good morning, everyone. I think that the partnerships and the unique landscape, I think that's the thing that anyone that serves in a Western Rivers tour can take with them. It's not like I can just leave the office and meet with a port partner in an instant. I mean, we have folks all the way up in St. Paul. So, maintaining those relationships distantly, I think that's a great skill set for folks that serve here on the Western Rivers. Additionally, just general problem solving skills. Every day is unique, but the Calm Cool Collective collaboration we have with our other government agencies and with industry to address anything that might come up, whether it be a bridge closure or shoaling or anything that I feel like every day is different here. So that would be my biggest takeaway personally, is just the adaptability and the communications that you have to have up here. And I'll pass to Chief Warrant Officer Quistad. He was here a lot longer than me, but I give him that opportunity to give his input too.
Thank you, Commander Moore. Yeah, well, for me, there won't be any future assignments. I'm actually on terminal leave. I retired about 2 weeks ago. But for anyone who is going to serve up here in the inland area of our country, you know, in waterways management especially, the one thing that stood out for me is understanding how integrated our transportation system is. You know, the rivers, the rail system, the highway system, it all ties together. And it's pretty neat to see how, you know, interconnected they are. And if one aspect of it is, you know, broken down or is slow or sluggish, it affects everything else. And, you know, I've got lots of experience, you know, lots of sea time on ocean going buoy tenders. But, you know, serving up here on the rivers, you really see how interconnected our entire transportation network is. And so, yeah, that was a neat thing to learn and take away. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you both for the answers. Thank you both for your service. Congratulations on retirement, Mr. Quistad, and Commander. It's good. I think I've seen you in Yorktown before, so it's good to see you back out in the fight out there in D8. Thanks again. Hey, this one we'll put this one out to any panelist. The closure of the I-40 bridge. What's being done to kind of like coordinate the response to that and to keep commerce moving? Anybody can answer.
I'll start it, I guess, since I'm on the front line here, but I know AWO has certainly been dialed in on it all. We've done what we do best in D8, which is get everybody in the loop right away. And thus far, we've had a mini command post set up in Memphis. Captain Rhodes has got everything rolling down there. Already pulled in our partners, both with the state governments, local governments. You know, it's all hands on deck evolution, and I couldn't think of a better place for it to happen. Unfortunately, that is a major thing that just started this morning, really, with all the phone calls. And I guess to answer what's being done is we're doing the best we can with the information we have. But until there's some I wouldn't say guarantees on the structural integrity, but enough safety factor built in, I think everything's going to be held up for the time being. But contingency plans are being developed, and folks are getting ready to develop a plan B, C, D, for depending on how long it's going to last. But I definitely would pass it over to you, Ms. Carpenter, if you have anything to add from the AWO side. But that's been my perspective with the calls we've had so far.
Sure. Thanks so much, Commander Moore. Yeah, I would just say that, you know, over the last 36 hours, 48 hours since this crack was discovered, these groups that we've been talking about kicked into gear. So first it was the Lower Mississippi River Safety Committee, which was monitoring the situation because of the really the significance of a protracted closure here. REDIS, the River Industry Executive Task Force, got involved. As the commander said, you know, we want to keep commerce moving. We want to do that safely. So we are not advocating as an industry that we begin passing traffic through a structurally unsound bridge. We need to make sure that the safety is there. As we understand what the situation is and the Coast Guard determines that it's safe to pass traffic, these groups are going to play a key role in determining how do we do that safely. You know, what span do we use? What conditions need to be put in place to make sure that we can do that safely? So it's a harrowing picture, isn't it? It's exactly why we need to have this kind of cooperation. David, I don't know if you want to add anything from the perspective of somebody who owns vessels that are actually in the queue.
Yeah, no, we're precisely aligned with you. We don't want to go under it unless we know it's safe, and you know, we're just trying to take care of our customers and make sure we can stage barges in advance of the known catch up we'll need to do. But you know, we've got to do it safely. We certainly don't want to expose our mariners or our equipment or anybody for that matter.
Excellent answers all around, and I'm sure, you know, to reiterate, Commander, the Coast Guard is no doubt doing everything they can, as is the industry. So thank you all for those answers. David, while we have you on the screen, we had a question come in about some of that high-speed navigation when the water's high and it's moving fast. How do you mentioned earlier that your company trains your tug masters to kind of handle that. How do they go about doing that? Is that simulator time? Is that you know, you get out there in the fire and they just set you down when the river's running? How does it go?
Well, a lot of it is on simulator. You know, so we have our own simulator. We use also the Siemens Church simulator set up, and we have basically a whole set of high water situations where they train. You know, I've tried it behind the sticks in the simulator going through Wilkinson Point, and our chief of operations had to intervene. I'll just say that. It's tough, and the simulator training really does help. But then they get out on the water with another experienced captain, and you know, they learn with the other captains. So you know, we also at times will put you know, for example, at Vicksburg Bridge, we'll put one of our best captains that's gone through it hundreds and hundreds of times during high water, and he'll board upriver and then take it through, and then you know, disembark and then head back up to catch the next tow through. So it's a combination. Mostly it's just a lot of training in the simulator or alongside somebody that's very experienced and done it before.
Excellent. If you ever got an open simulator spot, you let me know. I'll 100% try it out. See how it goes.
You just let us know when you're in Houston. We'll set you up.
Perfect. Thanks for the answer, sir. Admiral Landry, let's go back to you. Question was, why did you choose to get involved with the project to build the National Coast Guard Museum as a member of its capital campaign committee?
Oh, that's such an easy answer. So my first admiral assignment, I was governmental and public affairs, but I had the museum project as part of my responsibility. And it was always frustrating to not be able to have the American people or understand what we do and appreciate what we do. And we're unsung heroes. We're quiet and humble about what we do as a service. And so I'm involved because I really do think you listen to Commander Moore today and Chief Kerstead, and their answers are just so wonderful. And you're just so proud of these people that are serving on active duty, and you're proud of the mission we do and how critical it is to the country. I mean, we're serving in national defense. We're doing overseas work with the gunboats in Iran, and we're doing domestic work day to day on the rivers. And it's just such a great service. And I always was challenged by really telling our story and having the American people understand and appreciate what we do. We're not looking for credit. We're just looking for an understanding. And I think the museum is a wonderful venue to tell our story and to raise awareness of the service. We want to not only tell our story so we get support for our resources that we need, we also want to recruit the next generation of Coast Guard people. We want to really just the love that we developed and have for the Coast Guard. And obviously my husband, who was a buoy tender skipper, by the way, so I used to always talk to him about ATON issues, but we have a love for this service because we've been with it for so long. I want the American people to love and understand us, and I want them to appreciate us, and I want Congress to fund us, and I want us to tell the wonderful story of what our people do every day. So I'm on the campaign to build, and I'm so excited when it comes here because it's just going to be great to and I always I lament, I have family members who are other services, Army and Navy, and it's like, we're the only service without a museum. It's like, this is not fair. This is wrong. And we're there on the front lines, and we need to tell our story. So I am on the campaign, and David was shamelessly asking for support, and I will shamelessly ask for support because I do think we deserve it. Does that answer your question, Chief?
I love the answer, Admiral. And to boil it down to one thing, you bleed blue, I think is what it comes down to, as
Yeah.
all Coast Guard veterans do. So I'll ask you one more, Admiral, just since we have you on the screen. What exhibit are you most looking forward to in the museum? And you can be jaded and pick the Commerce Cutter or the Commerce section, or you can pick whatever you want.
Well, yeah, and I'm married to a guy who was on the operations side, like a law enforcement intel drug guy. And I was a marine safety professional. And I used to say to him, too bad you didn't pick this field. We did it because we could co-locate. But between the two of us, we love all the missions. I always say there's something for everybody. There's 11 missions in the Coast Guard. There's something for everybody. And the 8th District, as the former 8th District Commander, we had every mission. So I'm not going to pick one. I am a marine safety professional by trade. I do think facilitation of commerce is great. I'm on your podcast today because of it. But I like the something for everybody. I really love the fact that we have 11 missions and there's something for everybody in this service.
Excellent, Admiral. Yeah, if you want to read about blowing up rocks, responding to a broken bridge, law enforcement or search and rescue, the museum's for you, I would say.
Amen.
Perfect. And David, back to you one more time, sir. Had a question come in with all the partnerships and the work that you've done with the Coast Guard in the past. Does anything stand out? Any particular interaction or event that you could name that kind of endeared you to the service?
There are just so many of them, but I'll tell you, we've had our incidents in the past. Very unfortunate incidents. For example, if a ship hits a barge. What I will tell you is the way the Coast Guard works with us, ensuring the safety of mariners, ensuring the commerce gets back. It's such a good partnership, and where it really shows itself is when there is an incident. I mean, we all work every day, every watch to avoid incidents, but when there is an incident, working side by side with the Coast Guard is tremendous. It's a true, we've overused the word partnership, but that's what it is, because we all have the same goals. We don't want the bad incidents to happen, but when they do, that's when you see the true character of everybody involved. And it's tremendous to see that from our Coast Guard partners.
Excellent answer, David. And the same applies right back to industry. When one of those urgent marine information broadcasts go out looking for somebody to respond initially, without fail, somebody's always there to answer that call from the private sector. So thanks again for your answer. Thanks for the support. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, looks like we reached the time. So I want to thank again Rear Admiral Landry, Jennifer Carpenter, Commander Berger, Dave Grzynski, sorry, I always screw up that name, sir. Lieutenant Commander Moore, and Chief Warrant Officer Quistad, now retired. Thank you all for your participation today. We're thrilled that everybody was able to join us. And to those of you online, thanks again for joining us and for asking questions today. The Museum Association, its supporters, and those of us who have served are so excited about building this museum, helping to create a place to honor the Coast Guard, its people, and what the service does for this nation. Thanks again to all of you. Enjoy your week.
Thanks for having us. Be safe.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.